Hi, I'm Jeff Sangstack, the lead instructor here at blueeffects.net. I'm going to show you how to work with the Parallax Adventures slideshow template. If you've unzipped the file we've provided for you, then you're going to have a folder like this. Double click on it, and there are two files inside it: the project file, the After Effects Project AEP project file, and a README text file that we'll get to a little bit later. Now you can open up the Parallax Adventure project by simply double clicking on this, but I'm going to take a less direct route here. I'm going to close this down and start up After Effects by double clicking the icon here. You will probably see a splash screen like this. You can open up the project by clicking on this link here, but I'm going to close this down as well and take this particular route by clicking on File, Open Project. I go to my desktop and I find that folder, and there's the project file. Just double click on that. And I get this message here that says this project must be converted. That's because this project was made in the CS6 version of After Effects, and I'm working with the 2015.3 version, which came out in 2016. If you're working with a version of After Effects that's newer than CS6, you will get this message. And all you need to do is click OK. If you have CS6, you won't see this. And if you have a version that's older than CS6, it won't open. So you need to have CS6 or newer to work with this template. So click OK. If you have a newer version, you're going to get a file name that has the word converted in it. But in any event, you want to save this using a new name. You don't want to change the original template file. So go to File, Save As, and I'm going to go to my desktop here. I'm going to save this as, my slideshow, something like that. There we go. And from now on, whenever I save this, it'll save it using that name. All right, let's just take a look at this template. We have a main composition here, a main comp. And we have these markers here. Each marker represents a piece of media. You have 19 placeholders for 19 types of media. You can have images or video files or graphics, whatever you want in each of those places. If you have fewer than 19 media files, you'll want to duplicate them. You're going to want to take one or more of them and place them in one or more locations here, so you fill out all 19 placeholders. If you have more than 19, I'll show you how you can combine projects into one longer video a little bit later here in this lesson. Those markers are there to help you navigate through this composition. If you have the timeline active, and you know it's active because of a line around it like that, if you click on it, it puts this little line around it. That means that you can press the J or the K keys to navigate through it. K goes forward by one marker, and then J goes back one marker. So that's how you can quickly navigate through it, or you can just drag the current indicator either direction like so. This project begins by displaying all 19 images or video files very quickly in fast succession, and then counts down to number 1. It has an exciting opening sequence. Now there are all sorts of ways to customize this template, and I'll show you those customization features a little bit later. But the first thing we want to do is bring our media into the project. And there are a couple of ways to do that. I'll show you the easy way in a second. The less easy way is to go to File, Import, and then bring in your media assets that way. The easier way is simply just to double click here in the project panel. That opens up the Import File dialog box. I'm going to go to my desktop, and I've got some assets here. If I just double click on that, you're going to see these various assets, 7 video files and 1 still image. I don't have 19 here because I'm not going to fill up the entire project. I just want to show you some examples. If I want to select just a few of these, I click on one and then Control or Command click on other ones like that, and then click on Import. If I want to select all of them, I can marquee select by clicking and dragging like that to make a marquee. But a better way to do this, if you have all of your assets in one folder, is to import just that folder. So I'm going to go back one notch here to my desktop. The folder is selected. I click on Import Folder. That brings in the folder of assets there. Puts the folder right here, and there are those 8 things. All right, so the first order of business here is to replace all these media placeholders with your media. So I go down to the U Change folder here, open that up, and there are the media placeholders. There are 19 of them. Click on the first one, and Shift click on the last one to select all 19. And then double click anywhere in here. That opens up all 19 of them down in the timeline panel. I want to go to the first one, and if you have an older version of After Effects, you can slide a scroll bar here to go back to the first one. But in newer versions, there's this little flyout menu on the right-hand side here to go to Media 1. All right, now I want to replace this whole thing with some media. So I need to close this down now. I'm going to go to my assets right there. I'm going to put this first video in there instead of this gray background. So to do that, I just drag it over here to the comp panel like this, and it'll snap when it gets to the middle like that. That's because this clip is the same size as the placeholder. It's an HD clip, 1920 by 1080, and this project is HD. So I let go now, and that clip fills up that frame like that. Now the thing is, this clip is longer than the 20 seconds allotted here, and in fact back in the main comp, we only allowed about 4 seconds or so for each video file or image to show up here. So you want to be able to select the 4 or 5 seconds that you want to display here. So I'm going to go back to the media 1 and take a look at this thing. So he kind of gets up on the board right on there. That's kind of a cool spot right there. So that's where I want it to start. So I'm going to drag the start here. Hover the cursor over the end, you get that double arrow and drag it to that point like that. It doesn't have to be exact. Now I'm going to drag this clip to the left such that the start here will be at the beginning of the clip or the beginning of the comp. So that's what will show up in the first 5 seconds. You can see that the seconds are counted off here right there, and that's where it'll stop in the main comp. So go back to the main comp, and there's our clip there, and you see that just begins to end right around there. It transitions to the next clip over here. So you get those 4 seconds or so, 4 or 5 seconds, depending. So you want to select that fairly carefully. All right, now I want to add another piece of media and just show you a different way to do it. Click on Media 2, go to Video 2, and this time instead of dragging it into the comp here, I'm going to drag it down to the timeline. If I drag it into the timeline like this, it's going to put it at a certain time. I don't want to do that. It's not terrible, but it's easier to drag it right over here to the words, to the source name as it's called. If I drag it above the text, that's fine, but if I happen to go below it, this little placeholder text will show up there. I can take care of that by dragging this little clip above it like so, or I can just turn off the media text here, or this little placeholder text, by turning off the eyeball over here, this visibility. Again, I want to find a nice place here inside the video where things change a bit. It's kind of, not that dramatically different, but right around here it begins to turn orange, or kind of like that red sky there, like that. So I'm going to trim to there, pulling this to the right, and then taking the entire clip and dragging it to the left, knowing that just 5 seconds are going to play. So even though it goes away here at the end, that's 11 seconds into it, so we're not going to worry about that. The first 5 seconds are what's going to play. So I go back to the main comp now, go to the second placeholder, just kind of slowly get over there and see how it looks. And there you go, that's that next guy. Now you can see these gray lines a little bit more prominently here, and this is why we call this the Parallax Adventure. These gray lines are here on purpose, these little shadows, to give it a sense of 3D, to give it a sense of depth. Dark things are farther away, light things are closer to the camera. Also, there's this curvature here to make it look like the screen is kind of bent back. So we can customize these features, and I'll show you how to deal with that a little bit later. All right, I want to bring in one more piece of media. This time it's going to be a vertical format, and it's going to be larger than the comp. So I'll go to Media 3 here just so you can see it when we get there. Go to Media 3 here, and I'm going to go to this image. It's a vertical format image, and it's fairly large. So I'm going to drag it here above Media 03 like that. And you can see that it's bigger than the comp size because you don't see these handles like that. You don't see them on top. If you want to see how big it is really, you go down here to this drop-down list and click on something like 12%, something like that, and there you can see how big the thing really is. So if you want to see all of it, you can grab one of these handles and start dragging it in like that. But obviously you don't want to smush it like that. So to constrain the proportions, after you start dragging, press the Shift key. That constrains the proportions. Now if you forget to hold the Shift key down, let go like that, how do you recover? You simply start dragging it again, press the Shift key, and it will go back to the original proportions like so. Now if I want to see this back in full view again, I go down to here and click on Fit. Now it's a good idea to leave the gray in the background. If you turned it off, it really won't work very well back in the project. So leave that gray turned on and go back to the main comp here and take a look at that. You'll see how that works in just a second here. Go back to you. So the gray actually makes it look kind of nice like that. If I turned it off, it wouldn't look so subtle like that. All right, let's talk about this text now. I want to shut down all of the media placeholder comps. So to do that in an older version of After Effects, I would click on one of them like this, and then click on the X and then each subsequent X to close them down. But in newer versions, you can click on one comp you want to keep open, click on this little menu here, and choose Close Other Panels in Group. Let's go get the text placeholders by opening up that disclosure triangle, selecting number 1 here and shift clicking on number 19 and double clicking anywhere in here to open all 19 of them. Let's take a look at number 1 by going back over here to this little navigation thing, clicking on that, going to number 1, clicking on that one. You see that it looks like that. It will animate on, and you can see where the animation is going to end based on this marker here. We put that there for your convenience. You can edit your text anywhere you want after that point, but before that point it's going to be animating on, so you probably want to wait till you get to that point. So you see how it's going to animate on like that. To edit the text, you simply double click on it. This is 2 lines of text, so you edit them 1 line at a time. So double click on the first one and it turns red. When it turns red like that, that means you can simply type something new. So I'll call surfer guy. And Let's say I don't want to have anything in the second line. I can just turn off visibility for the second line like that. I have various options here inside the control down here. Every single text comp has this control layer in it. And you access the controls in the control layer by going to the Effect Controls panel. Now my Effect Controls panel is up here where it normally would be. But you may not see it in your particular interface because it might not be opened up. So to open it up, go to Window, and going down here to Effect Controls and click on that to open it up. All right, there are four options here: scale, position, line color, and text color. If I want to change the text color, I go over here and there's a swatch, a color swatch. Click on that. I'm going to pick, let's say, light green, something like that. And if I want to change this little line color, I can click on that as well. And you can do this for every single individual text placeholder. So I click on that particular swatch, or I click on the eyedropper and select the exact same color like that. Or I can change it to something else by clicking on the swatch. Let's say light blue, perhaps. Something like that. All right, let's see how that looks over the main comp. Let's see how it looks over that image. Go back to number one. And it's kind of smack dab in the middle of them. I think I want to put it up to the upper left-hand corner a bit. So I go back over here to text placeholder 1, and I have options for position and scale. So I'm going to scale it up a bit, let's say. And the scale has a slider, and the slider goes from 0 to 100. But notice it's at 156 for this one. So if I go to 100, it's going to be smaller. If I want to go to a number higher than 100, I need to drag this number. Just click and drag on it. You can drag it right like that or left, whatever you like. So I'll drag it to that size there. And now I want to position it so it's up here someplace. So I click on this little point right there, the little target there. And you see the current one is that right there. So that's where the point will be relative to the words and to the blue line. So I'm going to go up like this, maybe a little bit to the left, like that. And see how that shows up back inside the main comp. So that's how you control the text, the placement of text, and the text color. Assuming that you've added all the media you want to add and adjusted all the text you want to add, there are still some more things that you can customize. So I'm going to close down all of these placeholder comps by going to this menu again, clicking on Close Other Panels and Group. And I'm going to focus on the control layer here. Click on that. Go back to Effect Controls panel and notice all the various options here. There are 8 options here that you can work with. The first one is the Parallax Shadow Opacity. That refers to these lines here. And you can make those shadows darker or lighter. Open this up. Current setting is set to 24. If I drag it to the right, it'll be quite a bit darker. Drag it to the left, it'll be quite a bit lighter. Or you can turn it all the way off like that. Whatever you like. There's the frame curvature. This is the curvature right there. So click on frame curvature, open that up. There's a slider there. It's currently set to 83. If I go a little bit higher, it gets to a full curvature there. If I drag this number farther to the right, you'll see that it begins to shrink down the entire screen. So you don't want to do that in this particular case. So something less than 100. I can go to 0 and there's no curvature at all. But a little bit of curvature emphasizes that parallax feel to this, something like that. There's the curved frame color. That's this color in the background. Black is probably your best bet, but if you have a theme that's a certain color, you might want to put a different color back there. So I go to the curved frame color, and again, it's a color swatch. It's set to black right now, but you can click on that and change it to something else if you like so. Then there's what we call media noise. That's just kind of noise that comes in the frame here that just gives it kind of a gritty feel. If you open that up, you see that the slider is set just to 3. It's not really a high number. If I go to a high number, you'll see it gets really gritty. But again, that's your choice, whatever you like. You have no noise at all by going to 0, or just a little bit of noise, whatever you like. There are things we call light leaks. As we transition from one element to the next, there are these colors that sort of pop in here that give it a little bit of excitement. Those are called light leaks. If I go farther to the right, you'll see the colors being emphasized. So you take it as far to the right or the left as you want. There are 3 things that deal with the outro. I'll go over here to the outro. I want to show you how to work with the outro first before we deal with these 3 things. So I'm going to go back to the project panel, close this down like that. Down here in the U change, there's a Your Logo. You can add your own logo. So I need to import a logo. So I'm going to double click here, go to my desktop. I've got some other assets here, one of which is a logo. I'm going to drag that down to the Your Logo comp by double clicking on the comp and put the logo there by just dragging it down on top of the text. I don't want the text to be visible, so I just turn that off by clicking the eyeball here. I want my logo to be larger than that. Now, right now I have the text tool selected. You can tell by that little I-beam there. I want to change to the selection tool by clicking on this little arrow right there. Now it's a selection tool and I can change the size of this. Same as before, hold on the shift key to constrain proportions and drag it all the way up like that. All right, go back to the main comp and take a look at that. And you can see that it kind of covers up the text here. We'll deal with that in a second. I want to add some text there as well. So I go to the text placeholders, and there's an outro text here. Double click on that. And we set this up with the purpose of having you put your website there. So there are two boxes here, but the inside box is the limit of what you'll see on screen. So you double click on this, and you can put in some website, something like that. And if you want to make it larger so you can fill it up right to the edges there, you don't use a control layer for that. You do that within the text layer. Double click on the text layer to make sure everything is active, and go to the character panel here, and you can change the font size over here by just dragging this number, drag it to the right till you get as large as you want. But if it goes a little bit above the top gray line, that's okay because you can pull this down. So I'm going to click away to deselect that process. I'm going to go back and get my selection tool by clicking on this, and I can pull this down a bit so that it fits right there inside that gray box. All right, now I'm going to go back to the main comp and see how that came out. It's right there on top of things. Notice that these black boxes are there. That's not a problem because it's an animation. So the farther forward I go, they go away like that. But I still don't want it inside the logo like that. So now we go back to the control here, and there are ways to deal with that. Go to the Effect Controls panel. There are three things here. The outro background color, that kind of green right there. If I click on that, we can change it to any other color you want. So you might want to make that white, for example, if you like. And then the outro text position, that's this guy right there. I have a slider that just slides it up or down. If I slide this to the right, that moves it down right there. And the outro text color, you deal with the color here rather than doing it inside the outro text comp. Click on this instead of black. We can make it something else if you want to. Make it similar to the color of this, or I can click on the eyedropper tool and make it exactly the color of this, like that. All right, we've added all the media, we've adjusted all the text, and we've fixed all the customization. Now if you want to add some music or narration or some other kind of audio file, you can do that. So go back to the project panel. I'm going to close this down to kind of clean things up here a bit. And I want to bring in some music, so double click here. And I've got this audio file here. This is the music that was used in the preview video. Double click on that. That comes in like so, and I can add that to this comp simply by dragging it into the comp. It can be anywhere in the comp, top, bottom, doesn't make a difference. So this clip is just as long as the project is, and so it fades properly. But if your clip is longer than your project, you'll want to fade it out. And the way you do that is by opening it up like this. Click on that little disclosure triangle, click on the audio disclosure triangle, and you want to have the fade, let's say, start here. So you turn on the keyframes by clicking that little stopwatch and going forward a little bit like this, where you want it to fade out. And just drag this number to the left till it goes to -48, or you can type in -48, and the audio will fade over that time period like that. Now if you want to use that music that we used in the preview file, you can do that. We provided a link for you. Go back to the Parallax Adventure folder, double click on that, and open up this README text file. And there's a link that you can use to get to the website that we downloaded that music from. It looks like this. It's called the Pop Rock song here, but in fact the real name of it is The Best Day. And you can buy the license as we did for $19, which means you can use it, but you can't distribute it. So that's why we can't provide this to you as an asset. Okay, now that you've done all this work, it's time to export this, to make a video file out of this. And the way you do that is by making sure that this particular comp is active, not some other one, just the main comp like that. Go to Composition, go to Add to Adobe Media Encoder Queue. And that opens up a separate program that runs independently from After Effects. And your project will show up here. Now there are multiple formats that you can choose from when you're exporting a project, when you're creating a video file from your project. But I recommend you follow these steps to have a standardized approach, and you can adjust it if you need to later. First of all, from this drop-down list here, choose H.264. That's a standard output format that creates MP4 files that work on Mac and Windows. And then from this drop-down list, there are all sorts of presets, dozens of presets. But choose this one, Match Source High Bitrate. That will create a real high quality video. And finally, click on this hot link here to give yourself a file name, a file location. So I'm going to go to the desktop here. I'll call this one My Slideshow and click Save, and nothing will happen at that point. To actually do the exporting, the transcoding, click on this little green triangle there to start that process. Now I'm not going to do that now because it'll take a long time to do that, so I'll close this down. Now if you want to work with more than 19 media assets, I'll show you how to do that. First of all, you make your entire project just the way we did before, and you export it, and you probably want to name that Part 1. And then you come back here and do that process again, but then you do it just for the end. Let's say you just want to add 2 more files, for example. So you want to just add files to the Media 18 and Media 19 placeholders. Then you want to export that project as well, but you don't need to export the entire thing. You can do that by changing the work area bar, and that's this little guy over here. Just click on that and drag it to the right, like that. Since we want to use 18 and 19 and the finish, me go back over here to where 18 sort of begins popping up. And obviously you would have some images here when you make this change. So right about there is where you want the work area bar to begin. But you can start a little bit before that because you can cut some of this off later. Then you would export this the same process and you would name it part 2, for example. And then you need to combine those two files. So I'm going to close this project without saving it by going up to File, Close Project. I'm not going to save this just for our purposes here. I'm going to go get those two dummy files. Just double click on this. I have Parallax Adventure Example Part 1 and Part 2. I select the first one, Control or Command, click on the second one to select both of them, click Import. These are both video files that have stills inside them. I'm going to select both of them and drag them down to the new comp icon. If they're not both selected like this, just click on one and Control or Command click on the other and drag them down to the new comp icon like that. And that opens up this dialog box. You want to choose single composition and sequence layers. That puts one layer after the other with an overlap. The overlap automatically adds keyframes, which you want to work with. So click OK. This just example shows, let's say, the first 3 images, and then shows a final image, let's say 19. I want to go to the point before this thing transitions away to the outro, which is right around there. And then I'm going to transition to the next one down here, the number 18, like that. So this won't transition as smoothly as it does within the original template, but it still is a nice little transition like that. And then it continues for those last 2 images and goes to the outro text and the logo like that. That's how you can make a project with more than 19 assets in it. And again, you can add audio to this. And then when you're done with this, you export it using the same process you did before. So that's how you work with the BlueFX Parallax Adventure Slideshow template.